Politicians have long mastered the art of psychological manipulation, employing tactics that subtly sway public opinion without detection. From exploiting cognitive biases to crafting emotional frames, these tricks, like the anchoring effect or confirmation bias, operate under the radar, shaping our beliefs and decisions. To unravel these captivating mechanisms, we must delve into historical examples and psychological insights that expose the hidden strings pulling our perceptions. By tapping into cognitive biases, politicians exploit our brain's mental shortcuts to steer voter behavior without raising alarms. For instance, they might use the availability heuristic, highlighting vivid but rare events, like terrorist attacks, to make certain issues seem more pressing than they are. This subtle influence ensures that voters' decisions align with the politicians' agendas, all while appearing to be based on rational judgment. Politicians leverage the anchoring effect by presenting initial information that sets a reference point, subtly guiding how subsequent data is interpreted. For example, by first announcing a high proposed budget for a project, any lower amount discussed later seems reasonable by comparison, even if it's still excessive. This perception-shaping tactic ensures that public opinion is molded from the outset, making alternative viewpoints harder to accept. By strategically deploying numerical anchors, such as exaggerated budget figures or selective poll numbers, politicians set public expectations to favor their narrative. For instance, a candidate might tout a poll showing them slightly ahead, creating an anchor that makes their lead seem inevitable, even if later polls fluctuate. This expectation-setting maneuver can demoralize opponents and energize supporters, all based on a carefully chosen starting point. Reagan's iconic Morning in America campaign ad serves as a prime example of contextual anchoring, where a positive narrative is used to anchor public perception of economic conditions. By evoking images of prosperity and renewal, the ad set an optimistic frame that made voters more likely to view economic data through a rosy lens, overshadowing any negative indicators. This reference point effectively anchored the national mood, influencing how people interpreted the state of the economy leading up to the election. Politicians exploit confirmation bias by presenting information that reinforces existing beliefs, thereby strengthening voter loyalty. For example, by repeatedly emphasizing statistics that align with their supporters' views, such as crime rates in certain areas, they make it easier for voters to dismiss contradictory evidence. This solidification of support creates an echo chamber effect, where the politician's narrative becomes self-reinforcing and difficult to challenge. Through social media, politicians can cultivate media echo chambers that amplify their message and create self-reinforcing belief bubbles. By encouraging followers to share content within like-minded networks, they ensure that their narrative is constantly reaffirmed, while dissenting voices are marginalized. This digital manipulation not only strengthens their base but also polarizes the electorate, making compromise and dialogue increasingly elusive. Politicians often engage in selective data use, cherry-picking facts that bolster their position while ignoring those that don't. For instance, a leader might highlight economic growth figures during their tenure but omit data on rising inequality or unemployment. This narrative fortification makes their stance appear unassailable, as the carefully curated evidence creates an illusion of comprehensive support. The framing effect allows politicians to use strategic word choice to subtly shift how issues are perceived by the public. By labeling a policy as a tax relief instead of a tax cut for the wealthy, they can evoke different emotional responses and associations. This perception alteration is powerful because it shapes the debate before it even begins, steering public opinion in their favor. Through emotional framing, politicians can dramatically shift attitudes toward issues like immigration by choosing words that evoke specific feelings. Describing immigration as a crisis conjures images of chaos and threat, rallying support for restrictive policies, while framing it as an opportunity suggests potential benefits and encourages a more welcoming stance. This attitude-shifting tactic demonstrates how language can be wielded to manipulate public sentiment, often without the audience realizing the influence. Politicians wield value framing like a secret weapon, aligning their policies with sacred ideals such as freedom or justice to forge an unshakable bond with voters' hearts. During the 2008 financial meltdown, leaders sold massive bank bailouts as a crusade for economic stability, masking a corporate handout as a noble cause that tapped into public dread of collapse. This deep resonance tricks us into cheering for their agendas, convinced we're defending what we hold dear. Building on that emotional hook, they exploit loss aversion by pitching policies as desperate bulwarks against disaster, preying on our terror of losing everything. Take border security. Politicians don't promise utopia, they scream about invasion and chaos, framing their crackdowns as the only way to dodge a nightmare. This fear-driven framing flips the script, making even divisive moves feel like non-negotiable shields we can't afford to refuse. From there, they spin catastrophe narratives, casting their rivals' plans as apocalyptic threats to security or prosperity that could unravel society. In the 2016 Brexit saga, Leave campaigners branded staying in the EU as a surrender to subjugation, warning of migrant floods and economic ruin to terrify voters into their camp. These doomsday tales don't just smear opponents, they crown the politician as the lone savior in a world on the brink. Naturally, this leads to safety appeals, where they strut as the sole shield against those looming losses, daring us to trust anyone else. Obama's 2008 stimulus pitch wasn't just policy, it was billed as the only dam holding back a second Great Depression, a guardian narrative that silenced critics and locked in loyalty. By posing as our indispensable protectors, they peddle peace of mind as a prize only they can deliver. To seal the deal, politicians unleash a toolkit of persuasion techniques, crafting messages so irresistibly compelling they feel like truth itself. They blend repetition, slogans, and crowd tricks, think orchestrated rallies or online hype, to make their words stick and their power grow. These strategies don't just convince, they mesmerize, pulling us into a web where resistance feels futile. One key trick is the repetition effect, where hammering messaging into our skulls warps public opinion over time. Thatcher's 1980s chant to roll back the state didn't just outline her plan, it drilled privatization into Britain's psyche until it seemed like destiny. This endless echo doesn't argue, it brainwashes, turning repetition into a tool of mass reprogramming. A perfect case is Make America Great Again, a slogan that used relentless repetition to burn itself into America's soul. Trump plastered it everywhere, hats, speeches, tweets, until its slogan power morphed a fuzzy nostalgia trip into a rallying cry that owned 2016. Its genius was its simplicity, repeated so often it became a cultural tattoo no one could unsee. That echo gets louder with media amplification, as politicians team up with outlets to blast key phrases into an endless loop. Before the Iraq War, Bush's crew fed weapons of mass destruction to Fox News and beyond, cementing a lie as fact in the public mind. This coordinated barrage doesn't just spread their story, it builds a fortress of consent that's tough to crack. Next, they lean on social proof, faking widespread support to trick us into thinking everyone's already on board. Bill Clinton's 1992 campaign flooded screens with roaring crowds, signaling everyone's in and nudging doubters to jump on the wagon. This illusion of consensus snowballs, making their bandwagon feel like the only ride in town. Finally, crowd manipulation takes it further, using staged rallies and bots to inflate popularity into a mirage of unstoppable force. In 2016, Russian bots swarmed Twitter with pro-Trump buzz, crafting a fake grassroots wave that screamed "the people have spoken." This smoke and mirrors game doesn't just fool us, it bends reality, making their rise look like fate when it's pure theater. Politicians wield endorsement strategies by enlisting celebrities to sway voters craving social validation. When Oprah Winfrey endorsed Obama in 2008, her star power turned his campaign into a cultural juggernaut, pulling in fans who trusted her judgment over their own. This celebrity magic exploits our herd instinct, making us follow icons we admire without a second thought. To ram through divisive policies, politicians trigger the scarcity principle, conjuring urgency that drowns out debate. They might pitch a tax cut as a once-in-a-lifetime shot to save jobs, pushing people to nod yes before the clock runs out. This urgency ploy taps our dread of missing out, turning reflection into a luxury we can't afford. With time-limited offers, politicians cast laws as now or never deals that brook no delay. The 2008 bank bailouts were sold as the sole shield against economic Armageddon, with leaders swearing hesitation would unleash chaos. This urgency framing steamrolls dissent, branding naysayers as reckless fools gambling with our fate. By invoking resource scarcity, politicians claim dawdling will torch critical opportunities or drain precious reserves. They might warn that skipping a climate bill dooms the planet's last gasp, using scarcity fear to lock in support. This fear tactic paints critics as selfish wastrels betting against humanity's survival. Thanks to authority bias, politicians brandish their status like a golden ticket, lending shaky ideas instant clout. A retired general pushing a defense hike carries a credibility that makes doubts feel disloyal, even if his plan's thin. This status lever thrives on our knee-jerk trust in titles, short-circuiting our scrutiny. They juice this with expert backing, parading economists or scientists to sprinkle their schemes with legitimacy. Reagan's tax cuts rode Nobel laureates' blessings, turning doubters into apparent dunces defying economic scripture. This validation parade cloaks policy in a sheen of genius, cowing us with borrowed brainpower. More daunting still is institutional weight, where they cite the UN or NATO to give their words global heft. Bush framed the 2003 Iraq War as the international community's mandate, despite shaky support, draping his choice in unassailable prestige. This institutional magic makes pushback feel like a rebellion against the world order. Beyond reason, politicians ace emotional manipulation, whipping up feelings to snag wavering hearts. They stoke nostalgia for lost glory or rage at handy villains, striking our emotions before logic kicks in. This emotional game hooks us raw and deep, forging loyalty that facts can't shake. Deadlier yet are fear appeals, where they balloon terror to herd us into line like spooked livestock. Post 9/11, leaders didn't just fight terror, they cast it as civilization's endgame, making war the only lifeline. This strategic panic freezes us into submission, clutching their fixes as our last hope. They top it with threat exaggeration, inflating risks like terrorism or economic ruin to force blind obedience. In 2008, politicians swore bailouts alone kept ATMs humming, sketching a nightmare that made billions seem cheap. This danger inflation doesn't just spook us, it bullies us into bowing to their every whim. Politicians wield personal stories like a secret weapon, spinning victim anecdotes to make abstract fears hit like a freight train. When Bill Clinton shared tales of struggling Arkansas families in 1992, cold economic stats turned into raw, urgent pleas that made voters feel the pain firsthand. This anecdote alchemy isn't just storytelling, it's a calculated move to drag distant threats into your living room, forcing you to care. Next, they weave hope and optimism into inspiring narratives, promising a golden tomorrow to win your trust while the present crumbles. Barack Obama's 2008 "Yes We Can" mantra painted a future so dazzling it hushed doubts about war and recession, convincing millions he was their savior. This optimism offensive doesn't just lift spirits, it's a slick trick to make you bet on their vision, no questions asked. Then come utopian visions, wild promises of a perfect world that dazzle you into ignoring today's rot. Lyndon Johnson's Great Society vowed to end poverty and inequality in the 1960s, a shiny distraction from Vietnam's quagmire and racial unrest. This future bait hooks you with dreams too grand to fact-check, keeping your eyes off the mess they want fix. To keep the faithful fired up, they parade symbolic wins, hyping tiny victories as proof they're winning the war. George W. Bush's mission accomplished banner in 2003 turned a single battle into a faux triumph, fueling supporter cheers despite the Iraq chaos ahead. These small victories are cheap thrills, placebos that sustain loyalty without real progress. When it's time to rally the mob, they stir manufactured outrage, fanning fake fury to light a fire under their base. Donald Trump's 2016 rants about Mexican rapists twisted immigration stats into a red-hot threat, driving voters to the polls in droves. This rage recipe thrives on emotion, not truth, turning politics into a screaming match you can't ignore. To tighten their grip, they master enemy fabrication, crafting villains like Hillary's crooked persona to unite followers in hate. Richard Nixon's 1972 campaign smeared George McGovern as a radical peacenik, rallying conservatives against a strawman too extreme to love. This faux fabrication isn't just mudslinging, it's a glue that binds their tribe against a phantom menace. With provocative rhetoric, they hurl verbal grenades like death panels, Sarah Palin's 2009 healthcare jab, to hijack headlines and juice up the crowd. These inflammatory remarks don't clarify, they ignite, sucking air from sober debate while supporters chant louder. It's verbal arson, a deliberate blaze to keep them center stage and you too riled to think straight. Then they tap the nostalgia effect, conjuring a simpler past to peddle policies that smell like yesterday's comfort. Ronald Reagan's 1980 Morning in America ad sold tax cuts as a ticket back to Eisenhower's glory days, masking stagflation's bite. This retro romance wraps control in a cozy glow, making you pine for a time that never truly was. Digging deeper, they spin golden era myths, Leonizing the 1950s as a lost paradise to shove traditionalist agendas down your throat. Newt Gingrich's 1990s contract with America leaned on that decade's family values mirage, pitching rollback laws as moral revival amid cultural upheaval. This era envy peddles a scrubbed-up past where dissent was crushed and conformity ruled, all to dodge today's chaos. Finally, they wield selective memory, spotlighting past glories like FDR's New Deal wins while burying flops like the 1937 recession he sparked. Leaders cherry-pick triumphs to polish their halo, leaving skeletons like failed wars or scandals in the dark. This memory magic isn't history, it's a con, sculpting a legacy that blinds you to their stumbles. Politicians wield nonverbal influence like puppet masters, twisting your perception with silent signals that hit harder than any speech. Picture Nixon sweating buckets in his 1960 debate with Kennedy, his twitchy, damp discomfort flashed weakness so loud it drowned out his words, costing him the election. This isn't chance, it's a dark art of gestures and glances, a calculated game to shape how you see them without a whisper. Through power posing, they sculpt their body language into a throne of authority, radiating control before a single policy drops. Margaret Thatcher's iron spine and piercing stare didn't just demand attention, they screamed unbreakable strength, convincing the world she was born to rule. It's a primal trick, a posture play that crowns them alpha in your mind's eye, no coronation required. With dominant gestures, they sprawl like peacocks, using expansive stances to claim every inch of the room as theirs. Bill Clinton's wide-armed swagger during speeches wasn't casual, it was a power move, a silent roar of confidence that made him king of the stage. These bold theatrics are a subconscious shove, shouting "I'm in charge" straight to your gut. But they're sly, tweaking cultural adaptations to fit the crowd, bowing in Tokyo or fist-bumping in Detroit like a shapeshifter. Obama's loose Chicago strut versus his stiff Berlin formality wasn't random, it was a pose tweak, a chameleon's dance to stay relatable wherever he landed. This adaptability keeps them from looking out of touch, a conspiracy of charm tailored to every audience. Then comes mirroring, where they subtly ape your moves to sneak into your trust zone like a psychological thief. Clinton nailed this, matching a voter's shrug or nod until he felt like your oldest pal, a master of unconscious rapport. It's no friendship, it's a mind hack, pulling your strings while you smile at the illusion of connection. In behavioral sync, they echo your gestures to blend in, turning strangers into allies with a flick of the wrist. Tony Blair mimicked a reporter's lean or wave, a gesture match so smooth it felt like he was one of you, not a polished suit. This calculated mimicry is a charm offensive, a secret weapon to make you drop your guard. For trust building, they use mirroring to forge a fake shared identity, melting your skepticism with eerie precision. Reagan tilted his head just like a union worker's, a mirroring magic trick that painted him as one of us, pure deception dressed as empathy. It's a con so slick you don't see the puppet master's hand tugging at your loyalty. But watch for micro-expressions, those split-second facial flickers that crack their mask and spill the true intent. Nixon's smirk during Watergate pressers wasn't just nerves, it was contempt leaking out, a fleeting tell that screamed guilt louder than his denials. These tiny cues are the truth serum, a glimpse behind the curtain if you catch them fast enough. Nixon's emotional tells were a dead giveaway, his lip curls and eye darts during Watergate grilling flashed panic like a neon sign. That infamous smirk while swearing innocence wasn't a quirk, it was a micro-tell, a traitor in his face that betrayed the liar beneath. These cracks in the armor turned a poker-faced denial into a confession for those who dared to look. To bury these leaks, they master control techniques, drilling themselves to smother revealing expressions like seasoned spies. Hillary Clinton's icy calm during Benghazi hearings wasn't natural, it was a suppression firewall, honed over years to lock away rage or fear. This isn't poise, it's a chilling expression clamp, keeping you blind to the storm behind their eyes. Politicians weaponize strategic eye contact to manipulate you, their gaze a silent tool that can crush with dominance or seduce with empathy, depending on the game. In the 1992 debates, Bill Clinton's steady stare locked onto voters like a hypnotist, radiating warmth that made them feel understood, while George H.W. Bush's jittery glances telegraphed disconnection. This isn't just looking, it's a visual power play, a calculated duel where the winner owns your soul. Through power dynamics, they turn prolonged eye contact into a brutal assertion of authority, staring down foes like predators in a political jungle. Margaret Thatcher's unblinking dominance beam in parliamentary clashes was a weapon, a visual chokehold that forced opponents to crumble without her uttering a word. This relentless gaze transforms debates into silent battlegrounds, where blinking first means defeat. Yet with empathy signals, they flip the switch, softening their gaze to project warmth and reel in trust like a con artist's bait. Obama's lingering, gentle looks during town halls were trust lures, crafted to make voters feel cherished, even as the promises faded into thin air. It's an eye contact con, a fake hug that blinds you to the knife in their hand. Meanwhile, misdirection and distraction let them yank your focus from the inferno of truth to the smoke of nonsense, burying scandals under chaos. Boris Johnson's 2019 Brexit bus stunt, slapping slogans on a double-decker, was a headline hijack, drowning out EU deal failures with a clownish spectacle. This isn't quirkiness, it's a sleight of hand, keeping you chasing shadows while the real story burns. The dead cat strategy is their vilest trick, tossing a shocking distraction into the fray to derail everything, like a corpse flung onto the table. Coined by Aussie spin wizard Linton Crosby, it's the move where they drop a stink bomb, think outrage bait, so foul you forget their crimes in the gagging confusion. It's not just strategy, it's psychological sabotage, a stench that clears the room of reason. With sensational diversions, they stage absurd stunts to smother their blunders under an avalanche of ridiculousness, and Boris Johnson was the maestro. His 2020 zipline flop, dangling with tiny flags like a buffoon, was a media magnet, sucking oxygen from his COVID failures while we laughed at the fool. This isn't clumsiness, it's calculated chaos, a loud distraction that deafens the truth. Then there's timing tactics, where they drop bombshells with surgical precision to gut their rivals' big wins. Nixon's 1972 October surprise, a sham Vietnam peace deal, was a momentum killer, timed to steal McGovern's spotlight and lock in the election. This isn't luck, it's chronological warfare, a calendar coup that rewrites the news cycle in their favor. With whataboutism, they dodged the heat by flinging blame elsewhere, turning every accusation into a finger-pointing circus. Grilled on Watergate, Nixon whined about Kennedy's dirt, a moral smokescreen that muddied the waters and diluted his guilt. It's not defense, it's guilt redistribution, a coward's pivot to drag everyone down with them. In moral equivalency, they shrink their atrocities by equating them with trivial sins, like weighing a slap against a slaughter. Trump's 2016 both sides Charlottesville dodge was a scale scam, leveling neo-Nazis with protesters to blur the outrage and dodge the fallout. This isn't nuance, it's ethical fraud, a rigged balance that whitewashes the unforgivable. Finally, historical deflections let them dodge today's bloodstains by pointing to yesterday's graves, as if old sins forgive new ones. Putin's NATO did it first excuse for Ukraine was a time-travel alibi, dusting off ancient grudges to justify fresh carnage. This isn't history, it's chronological cherry-picking, a heist of the past to mask the present's horrors. Politicians flood the zone by unleashing a relentless barrage of excessive information, a tactic so overwhelming it smothers your ability to think straight. Picture the 2016 Trump campaign, a daily torrent of controversial statements and scandals kept the media spinning, ensuring no one could focus on policy amid the chaos. This isn't just noise, it's a calculated deluge, designed to exhaust you until the truth drowns. With data overload, they bury substantive debate under a suffocating pile of statistics and expert opinions, turning clarity into a casualty. During the 2016 Brexit campaign, both sides bombarded voters with dueling economic forecasts and immigration figures, leaving the public 2 days to separate fact from fiction. This noise flood doesn't inform, it paralyzes, a deliberate strategy to keep you lost in the fog. Through contradictory signals, they twist your judgment with mixed messages, sowing confusion so thick you can't trust your own eyes. Nixon's 1968 law and order mantra clashed with his secret Vietnam bombing plans, a signal scramble that let voters pick the story they liked best. It's not a mistake, it's a message maze, a psychological trap to keep you chasing shadows. When they need to push their agenda, they conjure manufactured crises, whipping up urgency so fierce it steamrolls any hint of doubt. George W. Bush's 2003 Iraq War pitch, shouting about non-existent WMDs, was a panic play, rushing Congress into a war vote before anyone could blink. This crisis conjuring isn't leadership, it's a scam, a fake storm to silence the skeptics. With false emergencies, they invent crises out of thin air, using fear to ram through laws no one would stomach in peacetime. The 2008 financial bailout was sold as the last stand against economic doom, a panic pitch that handed billions to banks while dissent was gagged. It's not caution, it's a power grab, a fear-fueled heist dressed up as salvation. When real chaos hits, they leap on crisis exploitation, twisting genuine disasters into launchpads for their hidden agendas. Post 9/11, the Patriot Act rode a wave of national trauma, a security blanket that cloaked a civil liberties gut punch as protection. This isn't just opportunism, it's disaster capitalism, a cold-blooded move to reshape the world while you're reeling. To keep you mesmerized, they master public image control, sculpting a persona so dazzling it blinds you to their flaws. Bill Clinton's 1992 Man from Hope tale painted him as a small-town saint, a nostalgia bomb that buried his draft-dodging past under charm. This image engineering isn't charisma, it's a mask, a shimmering lie to keep you hooked. Through personal branding, they craft a persona that presses every emotional button, selling themselves as your savior. Obama's 2008 Hope campaign was a brand blitz, a messianic vibe that masked Wall Street coziness with poster-perfect vibes. It's not just marketing, it's brand hypnosis, a spell that locks your loyalty to the myth, not the man. With narrative building, they spin their humble origins into a fairy tale so relatable you'd swear they're your neighbor, only shinier. Lincoln's log cabin legend was a rags-to-riches epic, glossing over his railroad cronies to cement Honest Abe in your heart. This origin myth isn't truth, it's a seduction, a story to cradle you into blind trust. Yet they're wizards at consistency management, bending their image to fit the moment while keeping the core deception rock solid. Reagan's shift from Hollywood star to rugged cowboy was a persona pivot, dazzling his base even as he slashed their lifelines. This identity juggling isn't evolution, it's a shape shift, a chameleon's dance to stay adored no matter the cost. Politicians wield controlled vulnerability like a master key, unlocking sympathy with a well-timed show of weakness. Bill Clinton's 1992 admission of smoking, but not inhaling, marijuana was a calculated confession, a wink at youth rebellion that softened his image without risking his credibility. This vulnerability play isn't honesty, it's a trap, a fake crack in the armor that lures you into trust. Through calculated admissions, they sprinkle minor flaws into their narrative, seasoning their persona with just enough authenticity to make the whole dish believable. Obama's 2008 nod to his youthful drug use was a flaw flex, a brushstroke of humanity that painted him as relatable, not reckless. It's not transparency, it's authenticity bait, a small truth to sell the bigger lie. With emotional displays, they turn the stage into a theater of tears or rage, each outburst a calculated bid for your heart. Hillary Clinton's 2008 New Hampshire tears were a sympathy surge, a crack in her steel that pulled voters close just before the primary. This isn't raw feeling, it's emotional engineering, a scripted storm to sweep you off your feet. Through costume psychology, they dress the part to hack your perception, each outfit a silent sermon on their values. Thatcher's power suits and pearls were a visual manifesto, screaming authority and tradition in a language louder than words. This isn't fashion, it's wardrobe warfare, a textile tactic to dress their way into your mind. With symbolic attire, they toggle between suits and sweaters like a visual Morse code, each choice a signal to your subconscious. Obama's rolled-up sleeves at a 2008 factory visit were a blue-collar wink, a fabric nod to the working class that said "I'm with you" without a word. It's not just clothing, it's symbolic semaphore, a flag of fabric waving their message home. Through dress code defiance, they shatter norms with unconventional attire, a sartorial middle finger to the establishment. Bernie Sanders' rumpled coats and wild hair were a visual rebellion, a style so defiantly unkempt it screamed authenticity in a sea of slick suits. This isn't carelessness, it's costume courage, a brave break from the script to stand out. With stage management, they turn every appearance into a theater of authority, crafting scenes that crown them king before they even speak. Reagan's 1984 Morning in America ad, filmed in golden light with flags waving, was a visual coronation, a backdrop so perfect it made his policies feel like destiny. This isn't just setting, it's scene sorcery, a spell cast in pixels and props. Through backdrop selection, they pick stages like factories or flags to hammer their message into your brain. Trump's 2016 rally rants in front of Made in America banners were a visual drumbeat, pounding home his economic nationalism with every frame. It's not decoration, it's backdrop branding, a scenic shove to keep you on message. With visual elements, they wield lighting and props like wands, conjuring an aura of power or trust. Nixon's 1968 silent majority speech, lit like a noir film with shadows cloaking his jowls, was a visual reboot, a glow-up that erased his sweaty past. This isn't just aesthetics, it's propaganda polish, a shine that blinds you to the rot. Through manipulative rhetoric, they twist language into a labyrinth, leading you down paths paved with euphemisms and loaded words. Bush's enhanced interrogation was a linguistic laundering, scrubbing torture into something sterile and acceptable. It's not just talk, it's word warfare, a verbal virus that infects your thoughts. Politicians fire loaded language like a sniper's bullet, using emotionally charged words to hijack your feelings before your logic kicks in. In the 2004 election, Bush's war on terror was a fear grenade, exploding dissent into accusations of treason while chaining freedom to blind loyalty. This isn't just rhetoric, it's a psychological ambush, designed to storm your mind and conquer your will. Next, they wield connotation use, slapping labels like patriot or traitor to rig debates before they even start. Nixon's 1972 silent majority was a connotation coup, painting dissenters as noisy radicals while draping his supporters in quiet virtue. It's a labeling war, where words brand you into submission with surgical precision. Then come euphemism tactics, where they cloak brutal realities in soft terms to make atrocities digestible. Clinton's collateral damage during Kosovo bombings was a verbal veil, softening civilian deaths into a sterile statistic that numbed your outrage. This is truth laundering, a linguistic trick to wash the guilt away and keep you compliant. Meanwhile, vagueness and ambiguity let them slither out of accountability, their words a thick fog hiding their tracks. Obama's hope and change was a promise mirage, so blurry it justified drone strikes without a whisper of protest. It's verbal smoke, a deliberate haze where responsibility vanishes like a ghost. Building on that, empty promises float out as vague pledges, seductive balloons that pop when you reach for them. Trump's "Build the Wall" was a commitment ghost, a slogan so elastic it promised everything yet delivered nothing concrete. This is promise vapor, a hollow oath that drifts away when the cameras stop rolling. To dodge the fallout, deniability tactics craft ambiguous statements, slippery phrases that evade any real scrutiny. Bush's mission accomplished was a verbal escape hatch, vague enough to claim victory while Iraq crumbled in chaos. It's linguistic limbo, a word game that keeps them untouchable no matter the mess. Shifting gears, rhetorical questions steer your thoughts like a puppet strings, nudging you to agree without noticing. Reagan's "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" was a thought implant, subtly pinning blame on Carter while sounding like innocent curiosity. This is mind steering, a question that commands your answer before you can think. From there, leading inquiries plant conclusions in your head, their questions a Trojan horse smuggling their agenda. Nixon's "What did the president know and when did he know it?" was a guilt grenade, convicting him in your mind before the evidence even surfaced. It's inquisitive incitement, a query that locks in the verdict with no trial needed. Adding fuel, emotional stirring uses questions to spark passion or doubt, lighting a fire under your emotions. Trump's "Who's going to pay for the wall?" was rage bait, a chant that turned rallies into hate-fueled bonfires without room for reason. This is emotional arson, a verbal match that torches your restraint and fans the flames. Finally, false dichotomies trap you in a choice chokehold, forcing you to pick between two rigged options. Bush's "You're either with us or against us" was a decision dictatorship, crushing nuance into dust and demanding allegiance or exile. It's a binary scam, a psychological cage where they hold the only key. Politicians strike with binary options, boiling life's chaotic choices into a brutal "with us or against us." Bush's 2001 war slogan wasn't just tough, it was a thought shackle, forcing you into a yes or no while crushing every maybe. This framing trick doesn't simplify, it enslaves, chaining your mind to their script. They peddle oversimplification like snake oil, offering you a quick fix for a world too tangled to tame. Reagan's "government is the problem" was a complexity con, a shiny lie that vaporized hard truths in a slogan's puff. This dumbing down doesn't enlighten, it lobotomizes, leaving you clapping for shadows. Politicians play group psychology like a fiddle, tuning your herd instincts until the crowd hums their tune. From chants to #wars, they whip up a mob mentality that drowns your inner voice. This collective con isn't community, it's a cage, locking you in their echo chamber. They rigged the bandwagon effect, staging a parade so loud you'd swear everyone's marching but you. Obama's "Yes we can" was a popularity spell, brewing a Kool-Aid so sweet it masked the aftertaste of doubt. This momentum mirage doesn't invite, it compels, herding you onto their wagon. With momentum narratives, they style their rise as destiny, a prophecy carved in stone. Brexit's "take back control" was a fate decree, branding any detour as treason against history. This inevitability illusion doesn't predict, it commands, shackling you to their timeline. They doped social media metrics with fake likes and bot armies, inflating their clout like a carnival balloon. Trump's Twitter legions were a digital mirage, a phantom fan club that made his fringe feel like a tsunami's crest. This metric manipulation isn't vanity, it's a psyop, a numbers game to numb your senses. Politicians sharpen the in-group versus out-group blade, slicing society into us and them with surgical cruelty. Nixon's silent majority was a tribal tattoo, marking his herd while banishing the rest to the wilderness. This division device doesn't unite, it conquers, building loyalty on the bones of the outcasts. They mine tribal loyalties like gold, forging identity into a chain that binds their base. Modi's Hindu nationalism wasn't just pride, it was a loyalty lock, welding faith to power in a furnace of fear. This identity exploitation doesn't celebrate, it subjugates, turning culture into a cage. With scapegoating tactics, they fling blame like mud, splattering outsiders to keep their hands clean. Brexit's 2016 migrant bashing was a guilt grenade, blasting reason to bury their own failures. This blame game doesn't solve, it scorches, leaving innocents charred while they escape. Politicians ignite mass hysteria, stoking collective emotions into a blaze that blinds and binds. McCarthy's Red Scare was a panic plague, infecting the nation with fear to purge his enemies. This emotion exploitation doesn't calm the storm, it rides it, steering the frenzy to crush anything in its path. Politicians unleash panic induction like a storm, wielding media-driven fears to jolt you into instant, unquestioned action. George W. Bush's 2001 axis of evil speech was a masterstroke, a fear bomb that shattered calm debate and herded the masses into war's embrace. This isn't mere alertness, it's a panic play, a sinister push to mute your reason with terror's roar. Next, they craft euphoria creation, turning rallies into joy machines that fuse supporters in a euphoric haze. Barack Obama's 2008 Hope chants flooded arenas with bliss, a euphoria engine that drowned out the hum of future drone strikes. This joyride isn't unity, it's a spell, binding you to their vision with a sugar-coated trance. Then comes crowd energy, where they transform gatherings into allegiance factories, forging devotion from every shout. Donald Trump's 2016 MAGA roars were a loyalty furnace, melting individual doubts into a red-hot mass of worship. This isn't excitement, it's energy harvesting, draining your spirit to power their reign. Through rally design, they orchestrate every clap and flag wave to spark emotional contagion, spreading fervor like wildfire. Adolf Hitler's Nuremberg rallies were contagion blueprints, choreographed to infect millions with awe and obedience in a single night. This isn't celebration, it's a psychic epidemic, a fever they fan to seize control. With symbolic rituals, they bind you using chants and flags, etching their creed deep into your core. The Soviet comrade salute was a ritual chain, linking bodies and souls in a rigid dance of submission. These symbolic shackles don't rally, they enslave, turning gestures into unbreakable vows. Politicians wage psychological warfare, twisting your mind until dissent feels like insanity itself. Richard Nixon's plumbers didn't just leak secrets, they were mind miners, burrowing into your sanity to bury inconvenient truths. This isn't politics, it's a psy-war, a relentless assault where your brain is the battlefield. Using gaslighting tactics, they unravel your reality, making you question even the clearest truths if they contradict the script. Trump's fake news barrage was a reality razor, slashing trust until the world felt like a lie you couldn't disprove. This sanity sabotage doesn't just confuse, it dominates, trapping you in their warped fog. With reality denial, they sweep facts aside like crumbs, dismissing truth with a sneer to sow chaos. Joseph Stalin's claim that famines were capitalist lies was a denial decree, starving millions while his words fattened the fiction. This fact funeral doesn't obscure, it erases, bulldozing reality into a pit of disbelief. Through history rewriting, they mold the past into a monument of their greatness, scrubbing away any blemish. Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution was a memory massacre, torching books and minds to crown himself a living myth. This past plagiarism isn't editing, it's theft, hijacking history to peddle their legend. Finally, smear campaigns let them hurl filth like paint, staining rivals while they gleam as saviors. Bill Clinton's 1992 bimbo eruptions were a character hit squad, trashing women to polish his image amid the dirt. This reputation raid isn't defense, it's destruction, crushing lives to keep their crown spotless. Politicians wield rumors like assassins' blades, slicing through an opponent's credibility with whispers that stick like tar. In 1800, Thomas Jefferson's foes spread tales of his slave mistress, a reputation bomb that painted him as a hypocrite despite his eloquent liberty cries. This isn't gossip, it's a destruction engine, shredding trust with shadows too vague to refute. Through association guilt, they lasso rivals to scandals with invisible ropes, tainting them by mere proximity to filth. Richard Nixon's 1972 campaign tied George McGovern to a radical aide, a guilt-by-link trick that sank his clean image in Watergate's muddy wake. This proxy stain doesn't need proof, it poisons with a glance, chaining the innocent to the damned. With a confusion strategy, they flood the field with doubt, paralyzing foes in a maze of half-truths and riddles. Bill Clinton's 1998 depends on what is his dodge was a doubt grenade, stalling impeachment with a fog that left critics grasping at smoke. This isn't debate, it's a mental trap, locking opposition in quicksand while they slip away. Using mixed messages, they spew contradictions that split minds and loyalties into warring shards. Boris Johnson's Brexit oven-ready deal clashed with his delays, a bewilderment brew that fractured dissent into baffled silence. This division alchemy doesn't clarify, it conquers, turning clarity into a kaleidoscope of chaos. Via disinformation use, they pump lies into the public vein, clouding truth until reality drowns in fiction's tide. Joseph Goebbels' Jewish peril myth was a muddying deluge, twisting German minds into a swamp of hate with no shore in sight. This truth blackout isn't error, it's a flood, washing away facts to float their throne. Deploying silence as a weapon, they choke the air with non-response, letting questions rot unanswered in the void. Ronald Reagan's mute stance on early AIDS rumors was a strategic hush, sidestepping blame while fear festered unchecked. This quiet blade doesn't defend, it cuts, slashing foes with the weight of what's unsaid. With critic ignorance, their silence starves opponents' cries of oxygen, draining their legitimacy drop by drop. Margaret Thatcher's refusal to name striking miners in 1984 was a voice vacuum, shrinking their cause to a whisper in the wind. This mute erasure doesn't argue, it annihilates, burying dissent in a tomb of neglect. Through information withholding, they dangle ambiguity like a noose, keeping enemies guessing and stumbling blind. Franklin Roosevelt's vague 1941 war hints were an off-balance game, forcing Congress to chase shadows while he steered the ship. This clarity starve isn't caution, it's control, tilting the board until foes fall. When weighing ethical considerations, the line between persuasion and manipulation frays under their cunning hands. Lyndon Johnson's 1964 Daisy ad nudged voters with peace pleas, yet its fear-soaked subtext was a manipulation seed blooming into war support. This moral tightrope doesn't sway minds, it binds them, blurring right into calculated wrong. Defining moral boundaries, these psychological tricks turn unethical when they rob you of reason's reins. Vladimir Putin's 2014 Crimea Little Green Men Lie was a boundary breach, twisting free will into a puppet's dance for conquest. This ethics grave isn't influence, it's tyranny, chaining souls to a master script. Politicians' motives twist their tactics into ethical quicksand, where intent decides if it's persuasion or a dark con. Adolf Hitler's public welfare promises masked a genocide agenda, proving that noble words can cloak sinister intent with chilling precision. This motive maze isn't strategy, it's a moral trap, where the why behind the how poisons everything. To judge impact evaluation, we measure harm against benefit, peeling back the glitter to see who bleeds beneath. Lyndon Johnson's Great Society speeches sold hope, but his Vietnam escalation left societal scars that outlasted the gains. This weighing game isn't balance, it's a ledger of wreckage, tallying who wins and who's crushed. Boosting public awareness arms us to spot manipulations, turning sheep into wolves who sniff out the shepherd's lies. Richard Nixon's Watergate denials unraveled when citizens noticed the pattern gaps, sparking a revolt against his shadow play. This awareness spark isn't passive, it's a weapon, lighting the dark so we can fight back. Sharpening literacy skills hands us a decoder ring for political messaging, stripping away the velvet to reveal the steel. Barack Obama's hope rhetoric charmed millions, but dissecting its vague edges exposed a control script beneath the shine. This decoding toolkit isn't learning, it's unmasking, cracking the code to see the puppet strings. Building skepticism training forges critical thinking into a shield, deflecting manipulation like arrows off iron. Donald Trump's voter fraud claims in 2020 crumbled under scrutiny, as doubters dissected his bluster into dust. This mind armor isn't doubt, it's power, a fortress against the sweet poison of their words. In the clash of transparency versus deception, we ask how much persuasion is fair before it's a velvet-gloved fist. Franklin Roosevelt's fireside chats soothed the nation, yet his war build-up secrecy tilted trust into a calculated lean. This fairness riddle isn't charm, it's a tightrope, where openness battles the shadows they cast. Setting disclosure norms demands politicians unveil their psychological strategies, stripping the wizard bare before the curtain falls. Tony Blair's Iraq WMD spin might faltered if had confessed the fear playbook driving it. This reveal rule isn't courtesy, it's a cage, forcing their tricks into the light. Crafting conduct codes could chain their tactics to ethical rails, barring the mind games that warp free will. Joseph Stalin's purge propaganda thrived unchecked, but a code wall might stalled his terror mill. This guideline net isn't suggestion, it's law, a leash on the wolves in suits. The media's role swings as both puppet and hunter, amplifying or slashing through these tricks with every headline. Rupert Murdoch's Fox News fueled Trump's MAGA mythos, yet leaks like Snowden's broke Obama's surveillance veil. This press pendulum isn't neutral, it's a battlefield, deciding who's crowned or dethroned. Through an exposure function, journalists turn floodlights on hidden manipulations, ripping the mask off the masquerade. Bob Woodward's Watergate dig toppled Nixon's house of cards, showing how ink can pierce the deception armor. This unveiling torch isn't reporting, it's war, burning down the lies to bear the truth. The media can morph into a megaphone for deceptive tactics, amplifying politicians' lies until they echo as truth. In 2016, outlets like Breitbart turbocharged Trump's birther conspiracy, a complicity danger that drowned facts in a flood of viral noise. This isn't reporting, it's a dark alliance, fusing press power with political deceit to reshape reality.